This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Madeline, host of Crowned and Dangerous here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come back to check out my show, Crowned and Dangerous, where Jessica and I talk about our time in the pageant world. A new show comes out bi-weekly on Thursdays. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Crowned and Dangerous. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy, and you probably are too. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here today with Emily and Elisabeth, and we're here to talk nerdy to you with our very own editor, Vic. Today, we wanted to talk a little bit about something that happened this past weekend. I don't know how many of you guys went out to go see this movie. I guess it's been coming out for a while. I think some of us actually waited a year for it to come out. Avengers Endgame. And it occurs to me what's really funny is we got to see it Thursday night at an 11:30 show, and there were people who were watching it prior to that, and our kids will never get the fun excitement of standing in line at a theater for hours on end to watch the movie come out at midnight.
I remember doing that with my sisters for the Harry Potter movies.
Right, and
we always went to the earliest showing we could possibly find seats for. And we waited in line with other people dressed up like Harry Potter characters. We stood in line for like 3 hours. Right? To get to our movie time. People don't do that anymore.
See, I knew people who did that, and I thought they were crazy. So I guess it's good that it's good that I'm not one of those people anymore. We just, make sure we have the ticket for that time, and we show up 5 seconds before the movie starts, and here we are. So
that's what we did. We were there on Monday night, and we just showed up literally at our movie time, walked in and got our seats.
Yes, isn't that like the most beautiful thing?
Yeah, reserved seats are the best,
I did hear that some movie theaters were actually doing like open all night for 72 hours straight just so that they could have all the people.
The theater chain that we went to was AMC, and they had some of their locations open for 72 hours straight just to make sure that there were enough showings for people. And I don't know, I feel like they hopefully maybe compensated their overnight workers a little bit better than normal.
Yeah, gave them a shift differential.
I hope so. I don't know.
I hope so, because that would really suck.
I don't know if I'd sign up for a 3 a.m. showing just to get extra hours. I'd want like bonus pay.
All right. So first things first, obviously this episode is going to be full of spoilers. Yes. So what are you doing listening to this? If you haven't seen it yet, go see it and then listen to it afterwards. And then you guys, let's talk about Avengers Endgame.
Well, the first thing that I kind of noticed about it, and this is kind of encompassing my feelings of both the kind of, I guess you would say, old Marvel and new Marvel as far as like the movies go, is I felt like I saw two different movies. Like the first about 2.5 hours or so was a lot like the kind of recent Marvel movies where the writing was kind of a little dissonant and just kind of weird and just had a whole lot of elements that I don't think really worked for me personally. And I was kind of getting disappointed because I'm like, okay, I've, waited for so long to see this. And now like, I really don't feel like this is fulfilling what I wanted to see. But in about the last 30 minutes, it really reminded me of the old Marvel movies, like the old Avengers and everything like that, where pretty much from the moment Cap wielded Mjolnir and I popped for it, I popped for that. That was the best moment. Mm-hmm. And pretty much, and from then on, I loved it, and I absolutely loved it. So I feel like I don't, if I rewatch this, I'm probably not gonna watch like the first 2.5 hours. I'm probably just gonna watch the last 30 minutes, because to me that's really like the best part of the whole thing.
My husband said that, because my husband and I saw it together, and he said that the fight scene, the big huge like war fight scene, was what he was thinking Infinity Wars was going to have. And so that's the fight he had been waiting for from Avengers was that. He's like, well, Infinity War kind of left me feeling a little disappointed because like I was expecting this big, huge, massive fight, and there was some big fights, but nothing like Endgame. Holy cow!
Yeah. Where you got not just Wakanda, you got Pepper Potts
Yeah.
coming in as rescue. You have all the sorcerers coming in to help, and there's all this, and you get the Asgardians coming in.
Everybody.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. It's so awesome.
Oh, it was so cool. Like
Pepper wasn't really fighting though. She's just a rescue bot, so
she was
she
helping.
doesn't have any like offensive
She had
weapons.
weapons though. She did have some offensive weapons, which is a departure from the comic, where the comic she doesn't have offensive weapons, but here I guess she was outfitted with a few. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but yeah. So that was really cool to see like everybody finally come together, and
It was fantastic. Yeah.
Explain to me old Avengers movies.
When I say new, I mean like the newer movies that they have this sort of writing style about them, kind of like Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War, and even Captain Marvel, and movies. Yeah, where it's the writing is just kind of like I feel like a lot of times they're trying to go a little bit too much toward Guardians of the Galaxy since it was so popular with that kind of comedy kind of feel to it, and it doesn't really work, and it doesn't work with all of the characters, and so a lot of the characters tend to be written and portrayed as what we in the fanfic community refer to as out of character, or OOC, and which is kind of weird to actually see in canon material, which yes, that does happen, but you know, but when I say older Marvel movies, I'm talking about like the original, like the first two Iron Men, the first Avengers movie, Captain America, the first Avenger, like the first ones that were coming out where it was really laying the groundwork and establishing all of the characters that we would see on the
those
screen.
movies seemed more sincere to me than the more recent ones. Sorry, Vic, go ahead.
Sure, I think part of the reasons for that is a lot of the earlier movies were like character introduction movies. So you're trying to get the feel of what these characters are before you actually get into the comedy.
Yeah, and so then when it gets like outside of just introducing these characters, and you're getting into like having them interact and actually do things, it's like the writers are like,
okay, it's like they don't know what to do with the characters now that they've been introduced. What one person might think is in character for a certain character might not be for a different writer. So I can understand that there's a struggle there, but at the same time, I think that if they're going to do something on that level, then they should have the ability to be consistent about it.
Well, that too, and very early on, like with Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, even Iron Man 2 and Thor, when those first 4 movies were coming out, they really didn't know their idealistic dream of actually making this, Phase 3 Infinity War project was going to actually pick up and get off the ground. They were still very skeptical, even going into production with Captain America. They were real hesitant on whether or not this big thing is going to work, because really no theater has done, or no production company has done anything.
I mean, it is pretty massive. I mean, it was something, like 21 movies leading up to Endgame, and so nothing else has been that big before.
Yep. And I think maybe that could also be part of the reason why the writing has been a little lackluster recently, because in the beginning, it had to be good. It had to be good because you wanted to make more, and in order to make more, you had to make money. And so the movies had to be good, and they had to be solid. But, when you get closer to the end game, literal and figurative, you're kind of like, okay, well, it's going to get done. It's going to happen. So, you kind of feel like you're kind of coasting a little bit. Does that make sense?
And it all had to be constant fan candy.
Yeah, and that they definitely did with this one. I've read a whole bunch of stuff that has just said, like, we're literally making love to the fans with this one. So, talking about as far as how much money they made and how much of the ginormousness of this movie was, So far, we do have a few numbers as far as like the domestic lifetime gross of the movie in the United States has been $357,115,007. Oh my goodness! But then foreign, the other 72% of the gross
Total.
income is
Yeah.
948 million. So I mean, that's really interesting, especially because like this is the first film to simultaneously release worldwide, other than Russia.
And that's opening
Yeah.
weekend,
Billion.
1.3 billion.
I mean, that's exciting. I think that's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and so that gives it a rank of, what is that? 18 of all time
18
so
highest?
far. For its opening weekend. Yeah. That's crazy.
At opening weekend.
I kind of want to know like what other ones
Right.
did that well.
I always want to look up the other stats. I always want to be like, no, what other movies did this?
Yeah, like this drew in a fan base comparable to the size of this. Now I'm curious to look it up sometime. But yeah, like that's massive.
And I also have to admit, so we know at the end we lose Tony, and I even had a friend of mine tell me that at the very end, during the credits, there's this whirring sound, and that's supposed to. People are thinking that this whirring sound is the same sound that was playing when Tony was in some cave building something
at the beginning.
So
of Iron
maybe
Man.
he's not really dead.
Yeah, building the
Come on.
original
I don't
suit.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't really think I stayed awake through Iron Man 2 or even saw Iron Man 3. So
Oh, they were good though. I enjoyed them a lot. My husband and
It's
I love
okay.
the Iron Man
I don't-
movies.
I mean-
There was a really good Iron Man 3 Easter egg.
right,
at the
because
end
we
of,
saw what's his
Endgame.
name?
I
Harley.
don't know if anybody caught that or not.
That's right.
That
I
one
forgot.
kid
I'm like, who is
standing
that
there
kid that
alone.
they showed really specifically?
Uh-huh.
I didn't recognize him.
But what does that mean?
In Iron Man 3, the big thing with
Yeah.
Tony was he was having like PTSD.
Well, everybody
over
did.
The New York
Yeah.
situation. And like,
Okay.
well, I just really focused on that with Tony, and it really humanized him. And this kid was kind of like his backbone and his support through everything. He had to use his garage to fix his Iron Man suit and these other things, and it just really kind of stripped him away from, in more ways than one, stripped his powers away to kind of
Gotcha.
bring him
But you know
back
what's
to being
funny
Iron
too
Man.
is we often have these transitions with characters that we miss, and that was definitely a transition that I missed, because I remember thinking that he was such a DB in Iron Man 1. So
Yeah.
that's probably why I was never interested in much more. And he's a much more human character in the Avengers movies that I've seen him in. So that's really interesting to me that I missed that transition, but it was still very evident even without having witnessed it.
Oh yeah. Well, and even in Endgame, he's just such a completely different person.
Right. His motivations are different,
Absolutely.
and his just everything.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting that they brought full circle from the first Avengers movie when Steve was getting on Tony, because he's like, you're never going to make the big call. You're never going to, be the one to make that
Right.
sacrifice and fall on the wire for the other guy. And I mean, at the end of the first Avengers movie, we see he attempts that, but now at Endgame, we see that he actually
He
did
did.
succeed in doing
Yeah,
that.
and
making
even
that
like
call
what
and
Pepper
doing,
said to him
making
when
that
he first
sacrifice.
figured out he could do the time travel thing, and she's like, and he's like, I should just throw it into the lake and forget
Mhm.
about it. And she's like, but would you be able to rest?
But will you be able to rest?
Yeah, and then when she came to him after he finally, did everything, and he was about to die, she said, "Now you can rest," and that she didn't mean
Yeah.
like you can go to sleep. Like she knew he was gonna die right then, and she was saying like we're gonna be
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna be okay. Like at first I thought she meant like she and him were gonna be okay, but she was meeting her and her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I cried a lot during this movie.
Yeah. Yep.
I am a self-proclaimed crier. I cry at everything all the time. So I wanted to be clear with like anything that I posted on social media that I don't mean anything by this, but I cried the whole movie.
I felt
But-
okay, super weird. So I'm 7 months pregnant right now. I cry about like everything, like little dumb things. For whatever reason, there were certain points in the movie where I'm like, I know I should be crying right now, but I just didn't.
Right. Well, and that's what I wanted to say too, is I wanted to cry a little bit more for Tony,
Yeah.
but it just
for
didn't.
Tony, it didn't actually like hit me until they showed his daughter while they were watching his little video thing that he recorded. I'm like, because his daughter reminded me of my daughter so much, and I'm like, like it just hit
like-
me when I saw her. I'm like, oh no.
I cried when he saw his dad.
Yes.
I cried
That was
when
fantastic. I loved that.
Thor was talking to his mom.
Oh yes.
I guess parents is kind of a thing for me.
When,
I cried
got to meet
with
his daughter
Steve at
again.
the end.
Scott Lang got to see his daughter after 5 years, even though it was only 5 hours for him. He, like he thought she was dead because he found out what everything happened, and then he found out that everyone thought he was dead because he was stuck in the quantum realm.
So let's talk about the quantum realm and some time travel then, because
quantum realm.
There's a lot of issues with this.
Man, there's some issues, but I'm glad they tried to kind of explain how they fixed it.
Yeah.
They tried.
I don't know. Elisabeth, go ahead.
I know you got stuff to say. Oh, yeah. Well, no, we know that you had things to say about
I
it.
have answers for this.
I hadn't been talking to you for a year about this kind of thing.
I thought it was really interesting how they addressed time travel in here because, they were making all these Back to the Future references and, Bruce actually, takes the time to explain that, this is not like the movies, which is ironic because it is a movie, but, but he, tell them, this isn't like, you're going to go back and, do things to your past self and then come back to the present and it's just going to fix everything. Like, your past, your present is going to become your past, and then your past will be your present, and then
which makes
your
sense.
future will be different. Like it's basically it's basically like you're making these different timelines then. So the ancient one kind of went into this a little bit when she was talking with Hulk with the Infinity Stones, but it holds true for everything else. So you go back to then and grab the Infinity Stones and everything, but that timeline will continue on and their future will be something different than the future that you're making for yourself. So this kind of confirms the theory now that Loki is alive because Loki grabbed the Tesseract and just booted out of there. And we don't see him again, but obviously, he's still alive. And at least in that timeline. So in the original timeline, he's dead, but he is alive in another timeline. So I'm kind of interested to see if he might pop up in the future in something else. Who knows? I don't know. But I thought it was really neat to see that because that kind of thing isn't really addressed a whole lot of time when you go into time travel and stuff like that. So they approached it from...
They did.
And
they approached it as carefully as they could because they wanted to make sure that they closed up any loose ends because if there were any.
And it's something that is really easy to abuse. So I do appreciate.
All right, but I still have questions. Ready?
Went about it.
How does Thanos come from the past into the future and get killed in the future prior to the snap? And does that matter?
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's a different timeline now. So were they grabbing him from the past? That's a different timeline that they're going into. And just like how I thought this was really interesting because it's actually directly in contrast to the Mortal Kombat 11 story that I was just playing, where Sonya kills the past Kano and the present Kano dies. However, in Endgame, the past Nebula is killed by the present Nebula.
That confirms
but
that
the present
it's an
Nebula
alternate timeline.
doesn't die. So
Yeah.
they're all, yeah. So it's not like you kill your past self, your future self dies.
Right.
It's,
So that's
your past and future selves are in different timelines, existing simultaneously, but they're still not entangled to the point where,
But the
one
grandfather
dying is
paradox
going
thing,
to
where like if you go
affect
back
the
in
other.
time to kill your grandpa, then obviously your father wouldn't have
Yeah.
born, which obviously then you wouldn't have been born.
Vic, were you going to say something different?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way
yes,
the way
yes.
the Ancient One kind of explained with the whole like timeline spinning off thing is exactly how the Marvel Universe
Yeah.
and the comics
Oh.
uses the way timelines work.
Yeah.
So every time you split off, it creates another universe. And so, and it's a universe per, like, think of a future and a past based on per person when something changes. So, like, Nebula and Thanos both have alternate timelines now because of what happened.
Yep.
With,
String theory
on both sides of things.
Right, but doesn't this kind of negate string theory?
No, string theory, no. Yeah.
Well, because
not
Steve
necessarily
goes back and puts the stones back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the idea behind that was that then there wouldn't be an alternate timeline.
Right.
There wouldn't be everybody else, but for everybody who has been affected by the time traveling that they did.
So it still creates an alternate timeline for those that were still there.
Right.
For
yeah, that's complicated.
It creates a smaller alternate timeline.
Okay. All right. I just want to know, since Steve decided to live out his life in his actual own time, after he got the stones turned back in, like, how did that affect things? Did that just give him an alternate timeline too? Oh.
Steve actually messes up his timeline twice.
Right.
He also fights himself.
Yep.
He kind of rectifies
he
that by using the Soul Stone, which is in
whatever.
Loki's staff, to control him. So what exactly happens with that, I don't necessarily know, but I think that's more saying,
I forgot about
you guys
that.
didn't really meet each other now because you don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I went back and saw the movie a second time yesterday to take notes specifically. But there are a lot of things. I think with the end sequence of Captain America actually going and living a life has a whole plethora of stories on its own that could be told, even with a spin-off series. Because it really depends on when he decided to go back and start his life with Peggy. That makes or breaks the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because he could very easily go back and meet her shortly after he falls into the ice, and there would then be no search for him again. And as long as he made sure that he didn't find himself again, then there'd be a third timeline universe that we'd be talking about. There'd be Nebula, there'd be Thanos, and then there'd be Steve Rogers.
Although I wonder, like, if he went back and lived with Peggy, obviously Peggy knows who he is and everything like that, but I wondered if he tried to keep everything else, like, on the down low, like, saying, like, let's just pretend I am dead, just to make sure that nothing else gets messed up.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing, too, is because if he goes back and joins Peggy and they still do the whole SHIELD thing, he can slowly, destroy Hydra as it's being built within SHIELD.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
I'd love to see that.
That would be awesome to see. And to, like, explain away his presence. Oh, well, this is Steve's twin brother.
It could have been like, he had to tell Peggy because he couldn't be in two places at once. He couldn't be off being an Avenger and then also being her husband. And as far as like the wiki fandom Marvel universe, we don't really ever have a name for Peggy's husband or kids. So the whole time it could have been Steve. It could have been him the whole time. And it's like literally my head explodes every time I even try and think about it.
Yeah, I debate whether or not I think he tells her or not, because, again, it depends on when he goes back, and it could be very easily that, he popped up somewhere, and the search for him is over because he's obviously there. And just has a lot of that factoring to do around it. And it's like I thought I remember reading something about the super
Oh yeah.
serum that he took does something about his aging, which then
It does slow it down.
he goes back now and he's already 70 with
Yeah.
Peggy.
No, that's not how it works. No, lived his life with Peggy, and then at that moment, it was when he needed to be there to give the shield to Falcon. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about passing the shield? Because everybody knew that was going to happen. However many YouTube videos I watched and listened to regarding theories and everything, I tried to stop like 2 weeks before Endgame came out because I was just going to ruin the movie for myself with everybody's theories. But a lot of times throughout the course of the movie, I kind of felt like I was watching what I knew was going to happen most of the time. I wasn't terribly surprised by anything except, Steve going back to see Peggy.
I was surprised by that. Honestly, like I kind of had the opposite because I didn't look up anything and I somehow managed to avoid spoilers for like 4 days. I don't know how. My husband had a coworker who was just dropping spoilers everywhere. His boss wanted to fire him. I'm like, I don't know if you can do that. But
I knew the shield was either going to be passed to either Bucky or Falcon.
Okay.
So did I.
I had no idea. I honestly,
because in the comics it's gone both ways. So I was going to go both ways.
And I did like how, like, when he handed the shield off to Sam, he looked back to Bucky, and Bucky nodded at him. It kind of, I think, like a subtle nod to, say that Bucky approved, because in the comics, Bucky got it briefly first, and then it was passed to Sam. So, instead of going to Bucky and then Sam, just going directly to Sam.
Didn't Captain America and I'm sorry, didn't Steve and Bucky exchange words prior to him going onto the quantum portal thing
they did
before
briefly.
he went?
I don't remember them doing that, but I remember a look that Bucky had on his face, like as it
kind of felt like he knew, right?
Like a reaction shot that Bucky knew what was going on the moment it totally felt like that, and he was the first one to turn around and
look at the bench
after Hulk couldn't get him back. And
well, when I first saw him sitting there, I'm like,
he just knew
is he skinny again? Because like I saw it like from the back of him, he looked like in this really baggy jacket, and I for some reason I thought he looked like he went back to his like before Captain America state.
His pre-serum.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know why he would do that though, but it just seems like that's what it was. And then I found out he was old. I'm like, that makes more sense.
What were you going to say, Vic?
Yeah. Well, man.
I said 145.
And muscle atrophy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to also talk about the.
All right.
Okay, so when all the Avengers had split up to do their specific missions to get all the different Infinity Stones, as soon as I knew that Clint and Natasha were supposed to get the Soul Stone, I'm like, one of them's not going to make it. I just knew. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How did I?
I did like that they fighted over it in the first round of seeing that scene.
Right.
It's like, okay, you guys just like pick one. You guys are waiting too long. Not to go.
I appreciated.
It was nice that it was drawn out. And
yeah,
they were like,
exactly.
No,
I appreciated that they didn't like settle on one really easily, and that both were willing to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have any emotional attachment to either of them, so I really didn't feel like one of them should go and one of them shouldn't. I don't even really know if I'm sad about Natasha
I honestly
or not.
don't know either. Like, Clint has been one of my favorites ever since the first Avengers movie. And I always like understood that he and Natasha had a really close relationship, but I never really like. She wasn't one of my favorite characters for some reason. So
yeah.
I will say this. I was never like the hugest fan of like Black Widow in the MCU. until Endgame. And the reason is because in the other movies, she's just very cold.
Yeah.
She's very distant. She doesn't seem to have a whole lot of character stuff going on. I don't know if the writers just didn't know what to do with her, how to portray her as, somebody in her,
Yeah.
position is. But I never really felt much of an attachment with her until that moment when she was in the Avengers tower or building or whatever, and she, had logged off of the communicators and everything, and she's making this peanut butter sandwich and crying because, she wants so badly for this family to come back together, and she, because that's all she has. She doesn't have, a spouse. She doesn't have children. She doesn't have parents or siblings or anything like that. The Avengers was all that she had as a family, and watching her like break down, I'm like, this is pretty awesome acting, Scarlett Johansson. You get real props for this from me, because like I really wasn't too sure on her for pretty much any other Marvel movie, but this one I liked. This one I thought had a lot of good.
I'll agree with you on that one. Oh, sorry,
really,
go
really
ahead.
well with the role and the character and everything like that.
I did like at Tony's funeral when Scarlet Witch and Clint were talking, and she had mentioned that, or Clint had asked, I hope that she knows that we won, and Scarlet Witch, said, she does, they both do. And I was actually thinking she was talking about Vision in Black Widow, but she was actually talking about
Gamora.
Black Widow and Gamora, because Scarlet Witch got
I didn't realize that's how she got her
the
powers.
Soul Stone, so there was some sort of connection there, and she just kind of knows what's going on. There's also a lot of
I did hear that, because it like
that
collects the souls
Stone is
of
kind
whatever
like
the people that
universe, or
are sacrificed or whatever, and so then they're like inside it or something.
Right.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, they did for Tony,
can I
but
just
like,
say for 1 second that I
were they
am
not
still
allowed
really
to,
mad
like,
that they
say
didn't
what
have a funeral
happens to
for
her?
Natasha. Well, no, because they had this whole statement that one of the Russo brothers gave, and I am calling BS on all of it, because they were asked, like, what about their funeral for Natasha, and they were like, oh, she probably had a funeral, but Tony, was a public figure, and I'm like, okay, number one, you are in charge of the movie. Shouldn't you know whether she had a funeral more than probably? Number two, he had a private funeral, not a public one, so that doesn't hold water for me. And
hold on, Gamora didn't have a funeral. It's a Soul Stone, and even Spider-Man said, like, he and all those other people that were snapped out with the original snap. Spider-Man said that they were gone for whatever period of time, and then Doctor Strange was like, it's been 5 years, come on, we need to go. And then he started doing his spinny thing. So that's almost kind of confirmation that there's another something within the Soul Stone, or something that happens as far as a afterlife type of thing for those that are snapped out for that. No? Come on.
Right.
Nobody else really knew Gamora aside from the Guardians, though. But everybody in the Avengers knows who Natasha is. They're her friends. They're her family. Why wouldn't they have a funeral? So maybe she's stuck in this Soul Stone, and maybe there's some weird possibility they could get her out at some point. But at the same time, they don't know that. As far as they know, she's dead.
Or however she got off the cliff.
You have to go by what they know.
She had to fall down, and at the bottom she was there, and her head was all empty of blood and dead.
Well, they repeatedly say the Soul Stone can't be undone when you sacrifice for the Soul Stone. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what? I forget what his name is. That's like the guardian of the Soul Stone or whatever. But he said that Red Skull. He said that it was an eternal, or a sacrifice for eternity, or something like that. Which to me means that whoever is sacrificed to get the Soul Stone is done permanently.
is done. They're done.
There's also rumors coming out that one of the spin-off shows coming off for Phase 4 or Phase 5 is going to be using a group of people in the Marvel Universe called the Eternals. To Galaxy 2, Peter Quill made reference of I can see him, it's eternity. So there's that eternal word thrown around that might, supersede the use of the Infinity Stones and the Soul Stones.
Oh, that's right.
There's also,
they brought her back.
It just came to my mind when Lindsay had mentioned it.
With
Gamora
Thanos
technically exists
and the other Nebula.
Now
that
dead. Yeah, because she was brought back.
Right, but I love
it. It's hilarious.
Quill
that's
now.
so funny.
I just love it.
Yep.
Yes. So now Quill's going to have to work double hard just to get her back again.
Oh, man.
It's going to make Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 very interesting to watch and wait for.
Ooh. Well, because they already have established
I wonder if it's going to be
Thor
like the Asgardians
really
of
well
the Galaxy
Rocket.
comic arc with Thor joining them.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that was so funny at the end. Like, we all know who's in charge here, right?
Pretty much everybody but
right?
Peter.
Of course. He said it.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
I did like that.
What was the name drop?
Plug too, which was the name drop of a whole comic series.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, Thor says now we're the Asgardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
And that's...
So wait, how do you guys feel about Thor letting himself go?
And a couple other characters too. No comment. No comment.
I think it was one of those weird character decisions because especially after all of the work that they did in Thor Ragnarok, building him up to be a leader and, take care of the rest of, the survivors of Asgard and everything like that. It just seems so weird. And I know that they're trying to go in the direction of, the events of Infinity War just broke him. But when you look at his whole character arc, starting with the first Thor movie, I don't know.
I need him to come back.
I don't know that I really personally buy it, but maybe that's just myself.
Well, I did like how when he went into kind of battle mode, he went very Norse god.
Yes, I did love that. I love that.
And that whole husky thing, it fit him for that. And it really did work. So,
and my daughter and I, the whole time not the whole time, but when she saw him in, battle mode with his Thor gear on, she kept saying, "Is he thin again? Is he thin again? Hey, is he thin again?" And she kept asking me, and I was like, "I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know." When he didn't have his armor on, though, Rocket totally had it. He looked like melted ice cream.
Really did. Yep. Well, I wonder if he was still.
That must have been quite the relief for Chris Hemsworth not having to do all of that working out.
Of course, right?
They probably,
a little bit. It was probably a lot of padding.
They probably gave him a little bit of padding, but still, like you don't have to do that.
The super lean, like cutting.
But he probably didn't have to do all that intense workout that he obviously had to do. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I think Men's Health actually did
make the rest of us sick. That's what we would do.
Daily routine to keep himself in it, general fit.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
Oh, what else do we got, guys?
I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things.
Oh. There's obviously tons and tons of Easter eggs in this movie, like relating back to comics or relating back to other MCU movies. But probably my favorite is actually a reference to a comic arc that I really don't like, but I thought that the reference was brilliant. When Steve was in the elevator and you think it's going to be like in Winter Soldier where he just takes them all out, but instead he just leans over and whispers, "Hail Hydra." That is a callback to a comic arc. Vic, you probably know which one it is. I don't remember because I didn't like it, so I stopped reading it.
I did hear that. Yeah.
It was a general Captain America comic arc, but it was one that was done super recently. It's like
Yeah.
it started and
and I think they actually retooled it because he was revealed to be a secret agent of Hydra, and that obviously did not go over well at all. And
That's
I
how
think
that
they
works.
pulled it back and retooled it so they were like, oh no, he was just a double secret agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, totally wasn't real. Yeah, we're just gonna totally retcon that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a marketing ploy to like say, hey, let's get people riled up about things because bad marketing is still marketing. And then they fly the way they would, so they tooled it back.
The only bad press is no press.
Right. Got to get people talking.
Yeah, but I thought the inclusion of that was just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that was,
because instead of just fighting them and taking them all out,
that. I'm like,
he just
does
it real
perfect.
slick and real peaceful. And
because I had no idea it was a reference to anything either, so I'm like, oh wow, that was really clever of you. Yeah, he is.
Steve is very smart. People don't really want to notice that about him, but he really is very smart.
They pulled in a whole lot of iconic moments in different comic arcs for Endgame. One of my other favorites was bringing in the Professor Hulk storyline, where Hulk and Bruce Banner really.
I think so too. I really enjoyed how it was like he's kind of like made peace with himself, like as Hulk and as Bruce. And they just kind of fused.
And there were so many people. I had heard so many like rumors about it too. Like everybody knew that it was going to happen. Everyone knew Professor Hulk was coming.
It. I didn't know that it was called Professor Hulk either. I'm just like, oh, he just kind of like became one person and is now like it's just
too
awesome.
Funny.
I loved it.
The way he was embracing it and the way he was like, oh yeah, let's take pictures.
Just
and
happy-go-lucky Hulk.
Man, oh man.
And then when they...
I just loved it. Well,
and it's funny because I didn't like it, but I think that was more because of the way it was written and portrayed rather than the character itself. Because it was especially the introduction of him was in the first part of the movie where, like I said, I didn't really enjoy it that much because I felt it was just a lot more reminiscent of these recent Marvel movies that are just kind of. I feel like they're all over the place a little bit. Like there's so much going on that they're not really.
Yeah, so we have to talk about
how to do it.
Captain America, Captain Marvel.
She kind of helped a lot.
So yeah,
like she helped in important ways, but she wasn't in a whole lot of the movie.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That was my concern after seeing Captain Marvel. That was my concern was that she was just gonna like swoop in and like destroy Thanos. Yeah, exactly. But that didn't happen. I appreciated the way that she was used in the movie, and also the fact that she's like there are thousands of other planets out there, and she's like the only one out there taking care of anything else.
I wanted more explanation of what she was up to, though. I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt it was sort of a snarky cop-out. And I think that was partially because, they had to explain this 20-year gap in her not being there. Whereas I think they put that in the 90s a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my personal opinion as to why they did this, but I think they put it in the 90s just to play off of nostalgia. Whereas logically, it should have been inserted maybe right before Thor. And so that would be less time in between Captain Marvel and Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah,
and
I think
so
I
agree.
I think they did want
reasonable
the
as
the
to
90s
why she hasn't come back.
Throwback,
to
the nostalgia, the fashion, the
20 years.
I did not like that she was standing so far away from Fury at Tony Stark's funeral. Why was she standing so far away from him? Why?
Yeah, they were like buds. At the end of Captain Marvel, they were just chilling, washing dishes together, making jokes.
Because that's like the one person she knows
And I
really
know
well.
that her haircut is now very Captain Marvel-y with the comics, yada yada, but I don't like it. I'm sorry.
Although
I like that it's all mohawky and ooh, it flies up when she. Yeah, but I just don't.
Is it trying too hard? I kind of got that vibe off it too.
I think so. We don't know any of her transition. Like I just want more. And, you know, because we so recently saw her origin, I wanted more than that. I wanted something where we explain what she's been up to for the past 20 years. I know we've been saying this the whole time, but I wanted more from it. There was a lot of like female empowerment going on in this movie too. And we've always seen a lot of this, and much more recently, you know, there shouldn't be, you know, female superheroes. There's all superheroes, and I get it. And I usually love the way that Marvel does it, but the nods to female empowerment tend to stick out more for me now. I don't know if it's because I have an 11-year-old girl, or if it's because of our culture, or, you know, social norms and things that are happening recently. But I do feel like there was a few nods to that, especially when, you know, I don't remember who it was, but someone was in dire straits, and I remember someone saying, "Oh, she's got help."
Spider-Man.
And there were all the female, leads.
That's the moment I specifically remember about the female empowerment. Because Peter was passing off the Infinity Gauntlet to Captain Marvel, and he's like, "I don't know if you're going to make it through all that," because you could see all the swarms of the other side, you know, just ganging up on her, and he's like, "I don't know if you're going to be able to make it through that." And then all these other awesome chicks showed up, and they said, "Don't worry, she's got help." And we're like, yeah, she'll be fine.
Yeah, but that's a cool nod to her. That's a cool nod to her too, not being OP as well. That she had help, and that you know, in this kind of situation, she might actually need help. That's
I mean, because it was not easy for her to get all the way to across wherever she was trying to get. I forget where she was trying to go, but yeah.
I also like that they had a little nod towards the comic relationship between her and Rhodey. The nod was very understated. The nod was very, very understated. And I mean, obviously with 3 hours and a lot going on, you don't have a whole lot of time to like delve into
That's
a new
interesting.
relationship.
I didn't really pick up on that.
But I did like that you kind of see at least like the beginning and the hinting of something there.
Oh.
Yeah, it is in the comics. And like if when they're on the whole conference call, like they Carol and Rhodey kind of like linger a little bit.
That makes sense.
And then Carol tells Rhodey to be careful.
I read that as just, almost, you know, War Machine being War Machine. So whatever.
Yes. Because he's the only other one on there.
Oh, yeah. His epic sword thing. That was cool.
Another good comic throwback was actually Thanos' weapon. It was actually a nod to... it's a really like a comedic nod to Spidey Super Stories number 39 from 1979, where Thanos actually traveled most of that comic in a helicopter.
That is funny.
Right, the Thanos copter, yes.
It was kind of a nod to that.
You know, I didn't even connect those dots, but yeah, you're right. That is hilarious.
Thanos copter.
Well, and speaking of weapons, everyone chuckled in the entire theater when Captain was able to hold Mjolnir.
Everyone cheered in my theater. It was awesome. We were like, yeah! Go Cap, go!
Yes. Oh, I loved it. I can't lie, I marked out for that. I was so excited because, and now this is an interesting fan theory that I had seen floated around since Age of Ultron when they were all
I remember that.
together and they were drinking and having fun and like everybody was trying to lift Mjolnir and Steve went to lift it and it budged. And there was the fan theory that Steve actually could have lifted it at that time, but when he went to lift it and realized that he could, he stopped because he didn't know
Yeah.
what those
Right,
implications would be for Thor and Asgard, and so he didn't want to disrupt everything,
That's
especially
awesome.
because it was
I
kind of
love
like a
that.
drunken bed as
I
to,
kind of had
you
a
know, oh,
little
who can
I
move
had a little
whatever,
head
you
theory
know.
that
So
Captain Marvel
want
might
to
have been
disrupt
able
anything, and
to,
so he
but I mean, she
just
didn't
let it
even
go,
try. So
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting off of it, in Age of Ultron, the reason why Natasha said no when she was offered to
I have such a hard time with the idea of the Marvel comics because I feel like because of the way they were written, they were really just going for everything. And I have trouble with the idea of canon versus non-canon.
yeah.
Right, because I'm obviously so biased because I love the MCU. So I feel like that is my
versus retcon.
universe no matter what, regardless of what the comics did or did not do or could have done, based off of especially the way they were written and the way they were just really meant to make good stories.
So speaking of the way certain characters were written, I remember hearing that Scarlet Witch was Magneto's daughter, and so
yes, both her and Quicksilver were originally Magneto's children, and they had this whole arc called House of M that related to them being his children and working with him and everything like that. And then they retconned it.
But so my husband
significant
noticed
that
though
happened in House
that
of
in
M basically
Age of Ultron, Scarlet Witch's
reason
biggest
now, I guess,
strength when she was fighting against the Avengers
So
was that she
awesome.
could mess with their minds and make them think things that weren't actually happening. And so they thought that they were fighting enemies, but they were fighting each other and all of this stuff. And then in every other fight after that, she didn't use that ability at all. And she just did like mental lifting stuff powers. That's what we were wondering. Yeah.
I say because she's a plot MacGuffin.
That's just how she fits.
Because she's basically as powered as and has the exact powers that she needs for whatever storyline she's in.
That's kind of the difference between choosing the good side and the bad side.
And she's pretty much always been that way, though. Ever since
it would have
she
been
was written
super
in the
cool
comics.
to see her,
That's pretty much always been her. So I mean, that is
her using the mind powers was kind of more like a villainous thing to do as opposed to a hero's thing to do. Essentially, is so she was choosing the side of good and being more moral about her powers in a way. Yeah. Which that's kind of what Paul and I were talking about, but then at the same time, it's still, I would think it's still kind of moral to do that to your enemies when they're actually the bad guys, when it is clearly the wrong thing. Right, save innocent people that are willing, even though they're willing to fight, they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and let them fight each other instead of hurt and kill your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
At least in the MCU, they actually showed that she had to get relatively close to them to push that power off. Those issues. I do know
that would be interesting.
They established her and her brother in Age of Ultron. It was also the time where legally the
I would love that. I'm sorry, because that is still my personal canon that they're Magneto's kids, because they've been Magneto's kids for as long as I've been a fan. Up until
what's the term that they use when it's not mutants?
You know, in my mind, they're still his kids.
Her father is Magneto and things
Miracles?
Like that. Okay. Miracles of science?
There's something different, though.
Yes, Inhumans is a Netflix thing. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But they're totally different than the mutants. They have this whole other thing.
And
Like,
then Inhumans came
it's kind of complicated.
I think for a Netflix spinoff, I think is it?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But that's what they kind of have gone.
And then there's actually a way to trigger it with Inhumans. Because I remember the Avengers Assemble cartoon, which I really cannot plug this series enough, you guys. Seriously,
it just kind of evolves within.
I really cannot. It is impossible for me to stand this series any harder than I already do. But they covered the Inhumans, and they did a whole arc with them, kind of explaining their origin and everything like that. And really, it's called Avengers Assemble. It's an animated series. And I mean, really, any arc that they've taken, they've done it really, really well, which is almost kind of a surprise for Marvel Animated, but hey, I'll take it. But they cover the Inhumans and kind of like their origin and how they came to be and everything like that. And it was great the way that they handled it, and to see all these different characters. Like, I had heard of some of them, but I didn't really like know who they were or like where they stood in Marvel. So that was really neat, and I would like to see if they kind of take that now.
I mean, I know that Netflix holds like Daredevil and Punisher and some of those other shows. Do we think that they're going to actually restart them under the Disney umbrella?
Yeah.
Okay.
Under Disney Plus.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
probably. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That does seem to be the scuttlebutt seems to be that they're going to start production on a lot of that stuff again too, because like Punisher were pulled for contractual reasons, not because of viewer. Because their viewership
I could even see all the stuff that's on Disney Channel being part of that too.
And I think that was part of one of the deciding factors for Disney Plus to kind of get on for Disney to get on the Disney Plus thing, because they saw that potential there.
Yeah.
They're getting into the streaming business too, and you're probably going to end up seeing in the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to see a lot of Disney Plus series start up and run with it. I think their biggest struggle.
Well, and basically, people who can binge these things are just going to be able to binge them with just that kind of subscription.
Then, when they first launch, and like three-quarters of the Marvel movies are on there.
Exactly.
Well, and okay, so we also have to talk about a few other spinoffs. I know that we saw Loki again, so we're going to probably see a whole bunch of his adventures with the spinoff that we know is happening with him. And then there's also I think I heard something about WandaVision, and I thought that was, for some reason, I thought that was like a play on WandaVision, but obviously it's Wanda and Vision. Mm-hmm.
That would be fantastic. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Do it. That'd be fantastic.
I haven't heard anything through like official MCU channels, but there's all kinds of buzz around.
I will join you. We can do it together.
Oh, I think there already is a season 2, but I do feel like it was recently put on Hulu or something.
The Agent Carter series only has 2 seasons.
Pitch it to Disney Plus and say, here.
Oh, yeah. See, so season 3 is what they're doing.
Let's do this.
You know somebody with a
I
Hulu
actually haven't
subscription.
gotten around to seeing the
Yeah.
series itself.
Okay,
But it would
and
be
so then
interesting to
what
be like
about a couple
series
of
two to that,
anybody know any
season two
loose
to that
ends,
trailer.
like Adam Warlock from
Yeah,
Guardians of the Galaxy?
they ended this Guardians 2 with the Easter egg of Adam,
Right, that
or at least a guy named Adam being born, right?
I need to find someone for the Hulu
Yeah.
subscription then. And then we need to talk later.
right. He's like the main
Yeah.
guy.
That could be because I mean that's the only other time he's mentioned is in that one. Yeah, 2021, I believe. Yeah. Okay, but now I have a question though, because moving on from here, in the next Marvel movie is Spider-Man: Far From Home, and there's this guy in like a gladiator suit outfit, but he does like warlock magic. I'm confused. Who is that guy?
The main big bad for the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie that's scheduled to come out. What is it? It's like a 2021 release for that, something like that.
Okay, so he's Mysterio though. That's his name? Okay.
Okay.
So he's like a wannabe.
Mysterio is a character who is kind of like a glorified magician, and it's more about deception, and he really doesn't know magic, at least in the comic books. He's more of a theatrics person. Right,
Yeah.
Mysterio. And it looks like I think it was perfect when Eddie Brock or one of the other students who said something like he looks like Thor.
Well, who knows?
Doctor
I
Strange.
think it's interesting because there's
a
been speculation as to whether
I think
well, if his thing is
going
deception, maybe that would be
big bad that Spider-Man's going to have to face, or if there's actually going to be something else and Mysterio is just kind of misdirection.
Okay. So he's creating things for Spider-Man to fight while he's trying to also befriend Spider-Man.
Well,
oh.
Yeah, I read a couple
okay,
plot,
I see what you're saying. So Spider-Man gets to trust him, and then he's like, oh, by the way, bye.
He's fighting so he can get close to Spider-Man, so he can destroy Spider-Man.
Or trying to gain his trust so that he can end up destroying him later. I feel like this is a plot of Incredibles.
Yeah.
We've seen this happen before.
Sounds a little familiar.
Well, more or less, he's creating things for him to fight, so Spider-Man can. He's trying to be a good guy, so he can,
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem rather familiar. And we have Samuel L. Jackson in both, so
yeah.
Right.
There's so much mistrust. I
guess.
Yeah.
Playing with people's minds, man.
Yeah. Sells movie tickets. So, what are your guys' top 5 moments from Endgame?
Oh boy, top 5.
Top 5.
we only get 5.
5 is too many.
Top 3. Go with top 3.
My absolute number one. I don't think anything else can top this. Was when Cap was wielding Mjolnir.
Yes.
Like.
Absolutely.
Because to me, that was when the movie started to really turn around and become something that I really enjoyed. So it wasn't just that moment, even though obviously that moment was pretty epic. It was the fact that it was the starting point to where the movie seemed like it really changed for me. So for me, I mean, that's got to be number one. That's got to be my number 1, 2, and 3. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And not just because I'm a cat stan.
I'm trying to think.
Emily?
Like, okay. I loved seeing Hawkeye with his family and him teaching his daughter to shoot. Like, that was fun. Like, we're starting our daughter with archery lessons pretty soon too. So like, I'm like, oh, she's learning how to shoot from her dad, and it's so cute. But like, so I liked that just because it's more of like a personal backstory stuff, and I like backstory, you know. But then everybody got snapped. I'm like, what? But I don't know. I think like Captain America and Iron Man reconciling with each other was really great to see.
Yeah.
It definitely needed to happen because after Civil War, they kind of just were not on the same terms. And so I was really glad that they kind of finally got to have that conversation of like, all right, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but that's in the past, and we can move forward and make the best of it. So I appreciated that they addressed that.
I think my top 5, obviously my number 1 is Captain wielding the hammer. That was just there. I actually made loud squeaky noises in the theater. Lindsay didn't actually hear me about that, but
I couldn't hear them because Aurelia was between the two of us. So
there we go. I will appreciate her for that then. I like Peggy and Captain having their last stand.
I loved that. I loved that.
That moment hit all the feels, and it was shot very well.
Yeah.
And then I actually have a personal connection with Falcon making his arrival, saying "on your left."
Oh yeah, that was from Winter Soldier, wasn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, it was in Winter Soldier. And it's actually the year Winter Soldier came out was the year I started running marathons, and I had a shirt printed up with "on your left" on the back.
Nice.
As kind of my motivator, so it's
that's awesome.
Kind of fun. And, yeah,
I don't know. No one's mentioned the fact that Scott had to appreciate Captain America's behind.
Oh yeah, that was great though.
I thought that was cute.
Okay.
I mean, really, he was just saying what we're all thinking.
It's true, though. Doesn't he always do that?
I mean, it is America's.
Yeah.
On top of that, Captain America also had a chance to acknowledge that he had.
That's true.
Well,
That's true.
I mean,
Which
is.
made me giggle because he was using language that was not okay with him like 10 years ago.
Right. Yep. So I can appreciate that, just like he did. And Peggy and Cap dancing.
Peggy and Cap. Adorable.
And I mean, I really fell apart when Thor was able to see his mom, and she said, "The future has not been kind to you." I mean, like the tears really started there because I do feel like there's a lot of humanness, although he's an Asgardian, to Thor in the way he broke down. And it's not just because of, just not being able to keep up the pirate angel thing, but I feel like he very, very completely embodied how some of those things would make someone fall apart. And I just appreciated that more than I'm going to make myself cry. So I'm going to stop this, but I really appreciated that in him. And I really appreciated Tony being able to see his father and understanding that he doesn't.
How could I forget about that?
That he wasn't always necessarily doing things to make Tony miserable, but that he remembered the good parts. And I was just
loved
floored.
that.
There was some really good writing there. Like I just loved the acknowledgements to parents.
I think a big thing in Endgame was that they were able to get closure on a lot of things. Closure, Thor got closure. I think Captain America got the best closure possible. He's lived with that for 70 plus years.
Right. And even when he was at her door, when he watched her walking around in, was it 1970 by then? It was so cool to see him still acknowledge that kind of pain and that kind of desire.
Even after all that time, like it wasn't 70 plus years for him, but it was still...
It was so fresh and so new for him too. Yeah.
And the relief.
Yeah.
I mean,
Man, no, well, so Tony seeing his dad and getting to have that conversation, like about parenting and being a father, like it was a cool dynamic because Tony is a father and his dad wasn't one yet,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was like Tony got to give his dad some advice, even and his dad had like no clue. It was
Right.
just really cool.
I think that is
Well,
like the whole theme, I guess, of Endgame. Not just that this is the end for a lot of characters, excuse me, but that this is closure.
Yes.
Not just
Yeah.
not just for the characters in different ways. I mean, obviously Thor gets closure with his mom, Tony gets closure with his dad, Steve gets closure with Peggy and his old life, and lots of characters get this closure, but the fans also get this closure as well. There is a certain satisfaction that you get from watching your characters, have this moment on screen where
Right.
they confront this one thing that has been just a thorn in their side and their psyche, and they finally get to address it. And that is a wonderful little bit of writing for each of them.
Definitely. I also go ahead.
Well, right, and I think all of us kind of said that too. Like that was exactly what we needed from this movie too. Was just for everything to come around.
Yeah, like the full circle
for all of
thing.
us.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think a whole nother episode would be what is coming next for the MCU.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, what is next for the MCU?
Well, they got a lot of stuff coming out, and there's so many different directions they can go with that. Plus, there's so many things that they can decide to just throw in there.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah, especially now that they have Fox.
Yeah.
I mean, they got so much to work with, and they're still working on a lot of contract stuff to figure out what they can do. So I think they're probably asking the same question too, but I would really like to see what maybe your listeners think about what to expect on MCU. I don't know if they're going to call it Phase 4 or if they're going to go with something else. There's also very much speculation on the timing of Spider-Man Far From Home, whether it's pre or post Endgame. It looks like it can work both ways. I would like to think he would keep his Iron Man spider armor.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Super great.
Stuff, but he's not in any of the previews with that, so I'm thinking that it might be pre.
Well,
I
think we looked it up and found out that it was post Endgame. So if he does get his Iron Man Spidey suit,
we did.
I'm thinking that Tony probably gave some to Fury.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, the technology is still there, whether he's alive or not.
And maybe Tony willed it to S.H.I.E.L.D. or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
well, guys,
would you just love to work for estate law?
Yeah, we'll have to see how that all works out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
I don't know. I would really love to hear what our listeners had to say, what they think MCU is going for in the future, and what they thought of Endgame, especially because we obviously have a little bit of conflicting ideas as to whether we loved it or hated it. But I really thought that it was a lovely fan service, and I can't think of anything that I absolutely abhorred or that I thought that they did poorly. Just because I am an MCU fangirl all the way.
Same deal here. I'm pretty much like, I really enjoyed it. I think it accomplished what it was supposed to. And I think it really wrapped up a lot of the Avengers storyline really, really well.
Yeah. I was surprised and emotional and
my goodness,
all the right
I
things.
Forgot. We didn't talk about Stan Lee's cameo.
Yes, the last cameo.
I loved it.
So cute.
I loved it. It was great too because he was I'm in a couple Facebook groups and one of them was like, did Stan Lee have a cameo in the movie? I'm like, yeah, he did. How did you miss it? But he was in the 70s,
yeah, you did.
though. So he was younger and everyone was expecting him to be old and like he had been in the previous movies, but they portrayed a younger Stan Lee instead, which was super fun.
Well, and it kind of added to the timelessness of Stan Lee as well. Like, we've seen him revert in age in the past 2 MCU movies that we've seen him in. So it's really cute because we kind of get to see, cute's the wrong word for Stan Lee, but we get to see him revert back in age, and he gets to be this timeless entity to those of us that are going to miss him so much.
I would have really preferred if they would have flip-flopped the use of his the Marvel flip opening to the Stan Lee tribute.
As opposed
one more
to
time.
Captain Marvel. Yeah.
Captain Marvel.
It would have been a little bit more fitting. I agree with that.
I understand because Captain Marvel was the most recent one after his passing, but at the same time, it might have held more weight because this one more people saw, I'm sure, and it's the final one, so.
But I did hear that there's going to be some kind of film or featurette about him and the filming of all of his cameos and that as well. There are a lot of MCU actors and actresses who talk about how they would talk to him about their characters or talk to him about the writing. Even Kevin Feige said that he would talk to him about things and he would say, "Oh, but the cameos." So it was really important to him, and I think that was really something that defined how he wanted to be able to go out.
Yeah, Marvel's putting together this big documentary.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's going to be great to see.
Yeah, and my own personal headcanon is the Stan Lee that we keep seeing pop up in all the different Marvel movies is actually a form of Uatu the Watcher. So
they've confirmed that already.
Yeah, so in my mind, even if we don't see him again, he's still there watching.
And it makes him even more timeless that way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. I think that's it for the Endgame.
Thanks for getting nerdy with us today, and thank you so much, Vic, for joining us. We really appreciated your input and your knowledge because you definitely have more than I do. That's for sure. So we loved having you on. I think he was on another episode, right? Was it?
Oh, we've heard him with Ready Player One.
Yeah, that was over a year ago. Wow, it's been a while. So thanks for joining us again. We had a lot of fun. Again, listeners, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are as far as where the MCU is going from here, because it's kind of an open book as far as what movies. Well, they have movies that are out and that are projected to be coming, but we want to kind of know what your thoughts are, if they're going to tie things together or how that's going to work out. So let us know on our social media channels, and we'd love to hear from you. With that, I am Emily.
I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Lindsay, and thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.